Hi, everyone. This is Ashley, the Communications and Marketing Director at CFRE International. And thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm just going to check something that okay, so great. You can all see my screen. And we've got James Dyer joining us today from the UK. So thanks, everyone, for being part of the webinar. We're going to walk through everything that you need to know to become a CFRE if you are a fundraising professional in the EMEA region. We are recording today's webinar, and I will email a link to you within 24 hours, and I will also send you a copy of the slides. We have a question pane, so please feel free to send us your questions there. Everybody's line is muted. All right, so I'm going to dive right in. So the CFRE, we are the only globally recognized and accredited fundraising certification. So whether you work in Madrid or Miami, it all means the same thing. It's showing that you work to the same standard in your fundraising practice. So that's one thing that people really love about it, is that it is a very portable certification. No matter where you go, it's going to carry weight with it. We started out in 1981, so we've been around for a little bit, but we have a great point of differentiation because a lot of different folks hold certifications that are very country specific. But because we're cross-border, that's really one of the large benefits to being a CFRE and holding our certification, right? So it doesn't mean that, hey, I'm really up to date on all of the fundraising laws and regulations in Austria or one specific area. Our certification looks more at global best practices. So we don't look necessarily at country-specific laws and regulations at all. And I'm going to show you a little bit more about what I mean in that regard, but that's a great advantage of the CFRE. So a lot of people in EMEA, we're growing there. We have a huge foothold in Canada and the US. And we've had a growing number of CFREs in EMEA lately, especially during the pandemic. I think people realize with more time, it's a great time to pursue a certification. But also at the same time, it's a period that's really pushing people's fundraising skills and knowledge, right? So, 3 years ago, who thought we would be in any of this kind of quagmire that we're in, but here we are. So CFRE, we're a third party that validates your fundraising knowledge. And I always say that's important, right? Because when you go into a job interview and you're up against other candidates, everyone is saying, I'm awesome, I'm a great fundraiser, I know how to do all of these things, right? But what's really that proof in the pudding? And that is the fact that you have a certification, right? So just as your accountant has a certification or your lawyer has passed an exam, this is what the CFRE means, that you've got that body of knowledge. Currently, we have over 7,600 CFREs in, I think it's 27 countries and territories now. And everything that we look at is grounded in ethical best practice fundraising. On this slide, these are some headlines that I pulled from the internet about charity scandals. And we all want to think that that doesn't happen in our sector, but we know that it does. I used to work for a nonprofit in Washington, D.C., and my coworker, who was a lovely woman I said good morning to every day and had a child and, seemed like this very upstanding person, she ended up embezzling between 1.5 and 4 million US dollars, and the full scope of that, was never actually even fully uncovered. So we know that unfortunately there are these things that go on in nonprofits, and they erode donor confidence. They can make boards nervous when hiring. So people are looking for full assurance that you are an ethical, above board fundraising professional. We did a survey last year to all of our current CFREs, and we asked them why they decided to pursue their certification. And the top reasons that people told us were to improve fundraising knowledge. Obviously, that's a great thing, right? You can never invest too much in your own brain. To be a more valuable asset to the organization. And I think we saw that a lot during the pandemic, because if you had people on your fundraising team that were made redundant, that were let go, and now you have to step into their shoes and help out, covering what they used to do, if that's in an area that's very foreign to you, that you haven't really had to do much personally, that can be really overwhelming and daunting. And obviously it can have some kind of an effect on the bottom line for your fundraising, right? So it can make you a more valuable asset to your organization in that way, because what we're looking at is a very holistic, well-rounded view of fundraising. And that's covered by our exam, which I'll get to a little bit down the line today. And then the number one reason that people said they became a CFRE was to demonstrate their fundraising knowledge to colleagues, their board, donors, and beyond. I don't know about you, especially for me early in my career, you know, people kind of look at you and go, well, do you really know what you're talking about? Are you sure that's true? We've had a number of people that I've spoken to anecdotally that have said, you know, I was really tired of not being taken seriously, or I have this very old school boss who, you know, is always like, well, you know, why do we need to do it this way? We've done it this way for 20 years and that's worked out fine. So it does give you that extra credibility to say, I do know what I'm talking about here. And I've got a quote on this slide from a CFRE in France about why she feels that there's a great value in the CFRE. And she says, the CFRE signifies adherence to the highest standards of professionalism, competence, and ethics, inspiring confidence in those working in this sector. So this is a really important thing. Also, in our survey to CFREs, we asked them, okay, what are the benefits that you have personally experienced? Because this is a process that people invest in, right? You're putting your time into it, you're putting some money into it, and you want to be sure that you're getting a good return on that investment. 89% of people told us that it led to enhanced professional opportunities. And we hear this pretty frequently, that once people become a CFRE, the next round of job hunting they do is a lot easier, that they're getting called back a lot more, that they are able to negotiate for higher pay, that it does translate into these enhanced professional opportunities. We also hear from 92% of CFREs that it boosted their on-the-job confidence. I believe that this is due to the fact that a lot of people don't do formal fundraising courses, right? Fundraising is a profession people come to in all sorts of roundabout ways. But if your education has come from being trained by this manager 8 years ago and going on one conference annually and some webinars, it's pretty safe to assume, you know, you may have some pretty large gaps in your body of fundraising knowledge. And so because the CFRE addresses that, people do find that it really lifts their confidence. And 94% of people said that it gave them a sense of personal achievement. I get emails pretty frequently from people after they become a CFRE and they say, I can't believe I did this. I'm so glad I did it. I feel great about myself. We've had some people say that it's like the best thing they've ever done professionally. So people do feel really good about earning this certification and what it does for their own sense of personal achievement. All right, so with this all said, I'm going to introduce you to our CFRE ambassador. So this is a CFRE living in England, Mr. James Dyer. And he became a CFRE in the last couple of years. And so, James, I'm going to turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about what motivated you to become a CFRE. Oh, James, I think we've got you muted. If you're able to unmute yourself.
Better? Can you hear me?
We got you now.
Perfect. Awesome. Sorry about that. We didn't have a chance to test before the call started. Hi, everybody. It's really great to see so many people on the call and to share with you a little bit about my personal CFRE journey. Ashley's given you a sort of overview of the real perks, but I thought it'd be really useful today just to share a few personal views. So really, I've been working in fundraising for the last 10 or 12 years now, and my most senior qualification was a music degree, and that didn't really match up with my experience as a fundraiser in all sorts of ways. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I thought that it would be a good time to get my accreditation. And having worked with CFRE accredited consultants in the UK for quite some years, I'd sort of benefited and seen firsthand how it was a really good thing. So that's really where things started, and it was definitely an opportunity for personal growth. I've been looking to move on to a different role with a different organisation. So I got my CFRE accreditation beginning of 2020, and within a month I was in a senior philanthropy role, working with a UK-based orchestra, which was amazing because it showed so sort of pragmatically how having that accreditation really brought me to the fore with the shortlisting process, and then obviously I was able to get in front of the senior leadership of the orchestra and really show my knowledge. And I suppose Ashley's already alluded to the fact that the sort of syllabus and the information you learn, if you have gaps in your knowledge from maybe not, maybe specialising in different aspects of fundraising, it really gives you a really broad overview that's so beneficial. And actually, in that role with the orchestra, and in my most recent role working with a large organisation in the UK, it's been amazing to be able to sort of cross-pollinate with colleagues working in different teams, in legacies, in corporate, in public fundraising, and I've been able to embed myself really well within a national team because I've had that base knowledge from CFRE, and also that kind of evidence of that knowledge. So that's really where things came from for me. I think Ashley's already alluded to the fact that it's internationally recognised, and that's been really appealing to me as somebody who's developed in fundraising in the UK, but also liked the idea of perhaps working overseas for a time. Ashley, could you pass on to the next slide? Or is this my only slide? I can't remember. There we go. Awesome. Yeah. So I mean, I've really talked about this a lot. I'll just speak a little bit about career advancement. The fact that CFRE is an accreditation that needs renewing every 3 years, and I think actually we'll get to this process a little bit further down the line in today's webinar. It really keeps you on the pulse of sort of national and international trends, and keeps your continued professional development relevant and prioritised in what is an incredibly busy sector. I'll just say one further word about the fact that through CFRE, we've actually demonstrated all sorts of fundraising knowledge, but also it's put me into a position of being able to line manage fundraisers for the first time, and going through a recruitment process recently, and having seen a lot of CVs and a lot of cover letters. The first thing I'm looking for is a fundraising, some sort of fundraising qualification to match experience, and it's still not commonplace in the UK, but it's increasingly becoming something that employers look for. So it's been really interesting to see from the other side the benefit of an accreditation on top of your fundraising experience. So actually, that's probably enough for me, but I'm going to stay around for the rest of the call and answer any questions that anybody might have at the end. Thanks very much.
All right, excellent, thank you. And we'll hear from James a little bit later too about how he studied for the exam. So thank you so much for that. So we'll jump in now to exactly what is this process. So there's two main steps. One is our online application, and the second is the exam. The application is free to start, and if you come over to our website, CFRE.org, we have 2 spots on the homepage where you can begin it. I highly recommend, even if you think, I don't know if I really want to do this, I'm still figuring out if this is the right choice for me, go ahead and begin your application, because you can start logging information into it. And in 2 slides, that'll become really important. But there's no risk to do it, right? If you don't submit it, you don't pay. You only pay if you decide that you want to submit it. So the application is looking at what you've done in the last 5 years. So, your recent fundraising experience. Sometimes people say, well, I was in fundraising from 2002 to 2014, and then I came back last year. Do I get any kind of credit for that prior life I had in fundraising? And unfortunately, no. We do look at the most recent 5 years. And that's really because we want to know everything is current, right? Because if you had all your experience in the 90s, the world has moved on a little bit, right? The application itself won't expire. So if you created an application 10 years ago, we still have it. And you can log in and out of it as much as you want. So you don't have to sit down, and clear your schedule one day. You can do it 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, whatever you're feeling. The first part of the application I'm going to talk about is education. There are 3 main sections. And the education section is what takes people the longest to complete, because this is where you are going to tell us about the fundraising education you have participated in. And the entire application works off a point system. You need 80 points earned within the last 5 years in fundraising education. And you're probably like, thank you, Ashley, what the heck is a point? So let me tell you. You will earn 1 point per hour that you're in a fundraising session. Super easy. You go on a 1-hour webinar, that equals 1 point. You go on a master class where the instruction time is 3.5 hours, that's 3.5 points, right? If you ever present, we award 2 points per hour. And the first time you present new material, we award 3 points per hour. If you're not into presenting, that's totally fine. You can earn these points as an attendee. There's no problem at all with that. Sessions do need to be at least 45 minutes to qualify, and that is really important now because we know as in-person conferences come back, a lot of times there's these little 30-minute sessions in the exhibit hall, and they're just too skinny to have the depth of what we're looking for. So sessions do need to be at least 45 minutes. Now, if you have an academic degree, we can award you points for that. If you don't have an academic degree, that's totally fine. It doesn't count against you, right? You don't need to have that. It's not a requirement. We award 10 points for a bachelor's, a master's, or a PhD, and any year, any major. So if you have a bachelor's in Italian literature from 2012, you'll get 10 points. If you have a master's in computer science from 1994, you're going to get 10 points. Any year, any major. And we can take up to 40 points in those degrees. So if you have 6 PhDs, I'm incredibly impressed. However, we do have to cap this at 40 points. Now, this is the big hiccup that people have when calculating their points, is you need to subtract out all the time that wasn't educational. If you go to a conference, unfortunately, we cannot award points for the time that you were having drinks in the exhibit hall or the networking hour one morning. That needs to be subtracted out. So usually we see with conferences, they're over, if they're like a 2-day conference, they're over 11 points. I'm gonna show you one example here of what this looks like in the application. This is my only screenshot from the application today because this is the one that is a little not intuitive. This is if you had gone to the IFC conference the last time it was in person, which was 2019. When you enter this in your application, you're going to tell us it's a conference. And then where it says name of session is where you're going to put the actual name of the conference. So if you go to a conference, you don't have to tell us every single session you went to, right? Don't enter each session because that would be insane, right? And where it says presenter, just type in various. We don't need to know the name of every presenter that you saw because, again, if you went and saw 2 panels that had 4 people each on them, that would get a little wild. So entering conferences is pretty easy because you don't have to remember each session you attended. You can see here that the total number of hours was 16.25 for IFC 2019. So if you did attend IFC 2019, this is a great resource for you. People say, well, how do I calculate the points of what I attended in the past? And you can do that by just looking at the agenda. If you don't have the agenda anymore, which is very common, just email the organizer and ask for a PDF. I went to your conference in 2018. Can you shoot it over? And the conference organizers are very obliging. They all have this stuff to hand. All right. Another way that you can earn education points is through volunteering. We call this service learning, but it's volunteering. And you can earn up to 10 points. Again, we're going back 5 years. And you earn 1 point per year per organization that you volunteer with. Okay, so let's say you do a beach cleanup 6 Saturdays in the summer. That's going to earn you 1 point. It doesn't have to be a volunteer activity that happens every single week or every month, right? A lot of volunteer activities just are not like that. And then if you are in a committee or board of an organization, a nonprofit, you will earn 2 points per year for your service. And this counts for your place of worship. If you're active in volunteering with your children's school, that is all going to qualify. All right. So we're at our first question break. If you have a question, feel free to type it in the question pane. I see we have the Polish Fundraising Association says hello. Thank you so much for joining us. It's awesome to see you here. All right, so I have one question here. Can you get credit for non-fundraising education? Okay, that's a great question. So the answer is sometimes. We can take up to 10 points of non-fundraising education if it is related to your job. So let's say you go on a business writing course or a time management course. We can ladder that up to your job, right? That's going to help you work better. So we're going to count that. We have people submit crazy things like chocolate making class. Like somebody really put that in there. Yoga for fundraisers, right? We can't really make a line between that and your fundraising practice. So just make sure that it's something that really ties to your job. We've had a question come in, what does IFC stand for? That is the International Fundraising Congress that takes place in Holland every year. Obviously, it's been on pause with the pandemic the past 2 years, but that is the big international fundraising conference that a lot of folks in Europe attend. And somebody says, how do we go about this if we became a board member in January 2022 and want to improve fundraising for the foundation? Can I take this course? So great question. In order to qualify, and we'll get to this in the next slide actually, you do need to work as a paid professional fundraiser. So if you're volunteer fundraising, that does not qualify. All right. But if, let's say you fundraise for your day job and then you volunteer on a board, absolutely, that is going to be perfect for you. All right. So it looks like we got to all the questions there. So professional practice, this is the second of the 3 application areas I'm covering. This is you working. Very straightforward. You need to have worked 36 months in the last 5 years in a paid professional fundraising role. 1 month equals 1 point, you need 36 points, right? Super easy. We realize people have career breaks, maternity leave, medical leave, all that stuff. So that's why, you know, we're quite flexible. People have been unemployed with the pandemic. So 36 months in the last 5 years. And as I said before, you need to work full-time as a paid professional fundraiser. Well, let me revise myself. Okay, if you work full-time, at least half your duties must be fundraising. So if you do marketing 50% of the time and fundraising 50% of the time, that's totally cool. If you work part-time, 20 hours a week, 100% of your duties must be fundraising related. So very easy to grasp there. All right, now here's where people overseas sometimes have a very big advantage on their North American counterparts in this process, especially if you're in Europe. So professional performance is you raising funds, and you need to earn 55 points in the last 5 years, and 1 point equals 25,000 US dollars. People ask, well, why is this US dollars? You know, my country is on the euro or pound sterling. And it is because of our accreditation. The accrediting body told us everybody must be using one currency globally. And so if you fundraise on the euro or the pound, because of the exchange rate, you actually are going to reach this a lot easier than people in the US or Canada will. So keep that in mind. This works out to be a very strange number. I don't know how it was arrived at, 1.375 million US dollars in the last 5 years. So just two notes on that. One is if you do event fundraising, you report the gross, right? So the total amount before you start subtracting out your costs. So if your event raised $400,000, but it costs you 120,000, well, I should say, let's say 400,000 euro, and it costs you 120,000 euro to put on. If you fundraise that 400,000 euro, that's what you're going to count. And fundraising is a team sport. If you send out a direct mail piece, there's no way to say, okay, well, let's see, the direct mail piece brought in 620,000 pounds. James brought in 100,000 of that. Shirley brought in 40,000 of that, right? There's no way to know. So if you're on the team that did that, you're just going to count the total towards yourself, right? If you were on the team that worked on the direct mail piece, that worked on the event, that worked on the digital campaign, whatever, you can take that full amount for yourself if you were on that team, because there's no logical way to parse that out unless you're one person shop, right? And then you don't have to parse it out because it's all you. The initial certification cost, we have two prices. The first is 700 US dollars if you're a member of a participating organization, and I'm going to tell you what that means in 2 slides. And secondly is 875 US dollars is the regular rate. Again, you're not going to pay anything unless you decide to submit your application. So a participating organization is an organization that CFRE has an arrangement with so you can get a discount. The Association of Fundraising Consultants in the UK, the Kenyan Association of Fundraising Professionals, and then the European Fundraising Association are all participating organizations. So with IFA, they have 19 member organizations that you can see here on your screen. So, you know, most individuals are not a member of IFA, right? It's more of an umbrella organization for these European fundraising associations. So if you're a member of the Polski, and I'm sorry to the people from the Polish Fundraising Association, I cannot pronounce this. But, you know, if you're a member of the Polish Fundraising Association or, you know, Association Française de Fundraisers, you know, any of these, you're going to be able to get that preferred 700 US dollar rate. What do you get for that? Okay, that's us reviewing your application. We're going to give you a digital badge when you become a fundraiser. It includes all of your testing fees and the printing and mailing of your certificates. So it's just what you're going to pay to us, and it's going to include all of that. The digital badge, you may have seen this, they're very popular on LinkedIn, is this social media badge that you get after you pass the CFRE exam. And this is a screenshot from someone's. I've scrubbed all of their identifying information. But you can see in that little box down the bottom, they got 147 reactions and 32 comments. These are a very effective way to announce to your network that you've become a CFRE, and there's no extra cost to you. Okay, so the second part of the CFRE process is the exam. And at this point, I always ask people, okay, raise your hand if you feel nervous to take an exam. Obviously, we can't see each other, so don't be shy. I really want to stress that if you feel nervous about taking an exam, to try to relax, because this is an exam on your profession, on what you do day in, day out. This isn't as if you're at university and you're being tested on biology, right, for a class that, you know, references something you may never need to know again. You are a very smart fundraising professional. The exam is offered 4 test windows a year, and the first day of every test window is the application deadline. So if you wanted to take the exam in the next test window, which is April 15th to June 15th, the deadline is the 15th of April to get it in. Once your application is submitted, you actually have up to a year to take the exam. So today is the 3rd of March. If you were to submit your application, you would have until the 2nd of March, 2023. We're really generous with the amount of time that you're going to have to study. So it's up to you. Some people like to take it straight away. Some people like to take advantage of the maximum amount of time. The exam covers 6 knowledge domains that you can see here on your screen. And you'll note that securing the gift and relationship building are almost half the exam. Make a really good point to study up on those areas, even if you think you know them inside out. This is the test content outline. This is a screenshot of just one part of it, so this is not it in its entirety. This test content outline breaks down everything that the exam covers. It's on our website, and I'm going to send it in my follow-up email to you as well. And my recommendation is to print it off, take a highlighter, and highlight everything that you don't feel confident you could answer an exam question on. And that's how you're going to know what to study. We're very transparent and upfront about what you need to know. So how do I get started studying? If you have 5 or more years of fundraising experience, we recommend that you study at least 40 hours. We found that's a real sweet spot. A lot of people who successfully pass the exam study 40 hours. And if you have fewer than 5 years, plan to study 80 hours at least. We have a resource reading list on our website, so you can see the books that we recommend. I'm a really frugal person, if you are too. There are a lot of affordable ways to get your hands on these books. They're in a lot of libraries. There are free audiobook trials online of some of them. If you know a CFRE in your area, they may be very willing to lend you the books that they use. So with that said, we're going to talk to James again about how James studied for the exam. So James, are you with us? There we are.
I am. Thanks, Ashley. This is the part where I go into my personal experience again, which is I hope useful as Ashley's gone through all of the sort of the general overview. So for me, just to give you a really pragmatic example, I was between jobs at the time, and so I had the luxury of not working full time then. So I was able to look at I think about a 3-month period of study, and during that time I worked through what I would say, I don't have it with me today unfortunately, but what I would say is the one book to go for initially, which is Achieving Excellence in Fundraising, which is the book that's sort of at the top of the list for the CFRE reading list. It's quite a big book, but it really breaks down those 6 areas that she's talked about in a really easily digestible way. The chapters are pretty short, and I just worked my way through it fairly chapter by chapter, making notes as I went, and testing my knowledge with colleagues, with former colleagues I should say at the time, and other contacts of mine in fundraising. There was quite a lot of support through social media. There's quite a few Facebook groups for CFRE, and there's quite a lot of opportunities for building study groups. I know that's really big in the States. It's getting a little bit more traction in our area, but there's nothing to stop you joining up with a group in another part of the world. So that's been really while when it came to the exam, there was the opportunity to do a couple of practice tests, which are all provided on the CFRE website, and maybe Ashley will say a little bit about that when she comes back on, but they were really beneficial. It's slightly strange doing such a long multiple choice exam, so it's good to sort of get a real feel for how I responded to that, and the sorts of ways questions would be asked, because sometimes quite a lot of the multiple choice answers were very similar and very nuanced. So just getting a bit of exam practice was really useful. But I would say in general, it wasn't a daunting process. And actually, in my experience, the biggest sort of hurdle, I suppose, to get over was actually completing all of the necessary preliminary work on the application side on the CFRE website. And once all of that had been cleared and approved and ticked off, actually the exam was just the logical next step, and it was fairly easy to go through the process for that. So reassuring everybody thinking of going through this process that it's not daunting, and the benefits have hugely outweighed any exam nerves. Ashley, is there anything else you'd like me to cover at this stage, or shall I pass back to you?
I think we've got it well covered. Thank you. And in the question pane, if you have any questions for James about his experience, his advice, feel free to put them in there. And when I finish the slides, we'll return to James and make sure that you get all the information that you need. So thanks, James. All right. So now we will look at what is the exam like. And firstly, it's global. So whether you sit for it in Nairobi or you sit for it in Stockholm, it's the exact same exam everywhere. It is completely computer-based, and there are no country-specific questions, right? So we're not going to say in face-to-face fundraising in Germany, what is regulation, right? It's not that kind of exam. And I have a couple sample questions, and I'm going to show you later. So it's going to give you a flavor for how these questions work. It's written at the 5-year practice level, so it's assuming that you've been fundraising for 5 years. And James mentioned that it's a multiple choice exam. It's 200 multiple choice questions, which is great because that means that the correct answer is staring back at you. You don't have to write any essays. And for each question, there are 4 options. So you're looking for the best answer about the best practice. This is really important to remember because my piece of advice to you is a lot of our organizations don't always do best practice fundraising. That's not to say, that you're unethical, but what I mean is you may have a boss who says we need to do it like this. And that may not be best practice. I have heard from people that when they were taking the exam, they had to think, okay, I need to think about the best practice way to do this, which may not necessarily be how my team does this, right? You have a cranky board member who says you have to do something a particular way, whatever, but what we're looking for is that real best practice. If you were training someone, how would you advise them to do it, right? You have 4 hours to take the exam. And last year, most people got through the exam. The average time was 2 hours and 45 minutes. We're incredibly generous with the amount of time you have on the exam. You will be able to check your work if you want. You do not have to rush. Every question ties back to something on the test content outline that I showed you earlier. So you're not gonna feel like something is like popped up and you're like, where did that come from, right? You're gonna know. You can move backwards and forwards inside the exam, which is really cool. The way it is structured, and this just changed this year, is the first 100 questions you will be able to answer. And then there's going to be a 10-minute break. And when that break starts, you cannot go back to these questions. So while you're in the first 100 questions, you can zip through, zip around, whatever you want. Once this 10-minute break starts, those questions are put to bed. You cannot return to them. After that break, then the next 200 or the next 100 questions open up, and then you can move around within those. So, if you're on question 14 and you're really stuck, but question 92 jogs your memory, you can go back to question 14. The score range is from 200 to 800, and we have information on our website about how the scoring works. I won't get too deep into that here, but 500 is the passing score. All right. Now, we're going to look at 2 example questions. These questions are not on the current exam. James alluded to a practice exam we have. You can find this on our website. It is a subscription product, so it's $59.95 US for a 30-day subscription, or a $99.95 US fee for a 90-day subscription. It's unlimited use when you have it in that time period. You don't have to use this. I can't stress that enough. If you want to do it, great, but absolutely it is not obligatory. So this question asks, what considerations must be made when accepting a non-cash gift like securities, property, etc.? So 1, the likelihood of the property being sold for cash. 2, the value of the gift and tax implications of accepting it. 3, the gift's appropriateness relative to the organization's gift acceptance policy. Or 4, the timing of the gift relative to the annual campaign. So I'm going to let you think on that for a couple of seconds. Okay, does everyone have their question in mind? And it's the gift's appropriateness relative to the organization's gift acceptance policy, right? Because if your organization says we cannot take any gift from an alcohol manufacturer and Carlsberg Beer says we want to donate 40 acres to you, you can't accept that, right? So the gift acceptance policy is always going to be your first port of call. All right, so now we're going to look at our second example question. When a donor wishes to make a planned gift / bequest to the endowment fund, the fundraising officer should first, 1, offer to contact the donor's financial organization and advisor. 2, explore what the donor wishes to accomplish with the gift. 3, identify and share with the donor the organization's future needs. Or 4, introduce the donor to various planned giving options. All right. So everyone have their answer in mind? And the answer is 2, to explore what the donor wishes to accomplish with the gift, right? You don't want to start steering the donor towards where you need the funds. You want the donor to come to you with where their interest lies. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of how these questions are asked. When I say it's global, right? You can see this question would apply whether you were in Spain or you were in Bulgaria, okay? There are 2 ways to take the exam. One is from your home or office, and the other is in person at a Pearson VUE Test Center. We only recommend the at-home or office avenue if you have a mobility issue or a health issue whereby you cannot go to an in-person test center. And I will be completely honest with you, people who test at home are more likely to be unsuccessful on the exam. Your home is not set up like a testing facility, right? It has distractions. It has a delivery person knocking on the door. It has a dog barking in another room. These things all take people off their game. There are very strict rules if you take it from your home or office. There's a person watching you through the webcam. If you look up at the ceiling, they're going to talk to you and tell you to get your eyes back on the screen because they don't want you to have notes up there that you're reading. It's very strict. So if you can make it to an in-person test center, that's our recommendation. And I have on here an example for Copenhagen. If you go to pearsonvue.com/CFRE and type in your postal code or the name of your town, it will show you a list of all the test centers, and then there will be a map that will also show you where they are. Pearson VUE is everywhere. They're a company you never heard of, but they're everywhere. So there's a very good chance that you will find one near you. And obviously, if you can't, there's the at-home option. All right. When you finish the exam, you're going to get your score emailed to you within 48 hours, and your digital badge will arrive within 1 week. We mail certificates monthly from our office outside Washington, D.C., so it may take you a little bit longer to get your certificate because, I don't know if you know, but mail in the United States is a huge mess right now, and has been. So anyway, you will get through the badge and your score email, though, all of your assurance that you have passed. Now, if you are unsuccessful on the exam, and I have to applaud this group that no one asked this question, what happens if I fail the exam? Because it's usually the first question I get, and I always wonder, why are people so nervous about this already if you haven't even started your application? So if you do need to retake the exam, there's a 30-day wait period. And then there's a US $375 retake fee. People say, gosh, Ashley, that's a lot of money. And yeah, we don't want you to retake the exam. We want you to become a CFRE the first time. You want to become a CFRE the first time. So don't just think, oh, I've been fundraising for 15 years. I'm going to plop myself down in the chair and take the exam and pass with flying colors. That really rarely happens for people. There is an amount of studying that needs to be done. There's up to 3 attempts on one application. I only know of this happening twice in my 4 years here, so it's incredibly rare. And just study thoroughly the first time. so you don't have to worry about any of this. Now, recertification. Okay, some people say, well, Ashley, I earned my CFRE. Why do I need to recertify? Well, I told you we've been around since 1981, and we have 2 people who earned their CFRE in 1981 who are still fundraising. If those people never did another drop of fundraising education, how out of date would their body of knowledge be? I mean, that would be crazy, right? So you need to recertify because that's why the CFRE carries the weight that it does. Your fundraising practice and knowledge is current. It's every 3 years and it's an online application. You can start it as soon as you pass the CFRE exam. You can begin logging things for your recertification if you want. It's US $510 at the regular price, but if you're a member of a participating organization, that's when it's $408 US. A lot of people get this built into their next job contract, right? So if you're interviewing for a job, they make you an offer and you think, okay, well, I know in 2025, I have to recertify my CFRE. Ask for that to be in the employment contract. About 52% of CFREs have their employer contribute to part or all of the costs of the certification. So this is not an out of line question to ask. And there's no exam. Once you pass our exam, you're golden. As long as you don't lapse, you will never have to take it again. All right. Now, for recertification, you need 45 points of continuing education, right? So essentially 15 hours of education a year if you want to break it down really easily. That's very achievable. 30 points in professional practice. So that means you need to be working for 2.5 out of those 3 years. And you need 40 points in professional performance because we need to see that you're continuing to fundraise. All right, so if you have a question, feel free to put it in the question pane. I'm going to wrap us up in the next slide here. The next step really is to just start your application at no cost. You have nothing to lose by doing it. And I told you, you can put your education in there and log it as you go along. I wanted to tell you, you can use us. And what I mean by that is, when you have your annual review with your boss, you want to tell them about all the education that you did in the preceding year, but most people are not keeping a list. If you create your CFRE application and you're logging everything in there, when you have your annual review, you can just jump in there and tell your boss, okay, well, I went on this webinar in January, I went to this conference in March. It's a lot easier. So even if you don't pursue your CFRE, you can use our application as a way to track your own education. Update as you go, that's a big mistake people make is they think, okay, it's rainy out today. I'm gonna sit and work on my CFRE application, and they haven't kept any data about the education that they've attended, and all of a sudden they're like, how do I even jog my memory on 5 years of what I've attended? If you do need to jog your memory, you can go through your calendar, credit card receipts, expense reports. Those are really common ways that people reconstruct the education that they previously attended. Okay. All right, so we are at the final Q&A portion here. So I have a question that's come in. If you need to work 30 months out of 3 years for recertification, what happens if I'm on maternity leave for 1 year? Awesome question. So if you are out of work, not working for more than 6 months in that recertification period, that's not a deal breaker. You can contact us at succeed@cfre.org and we will work with you. Nobody is going to lose their CFRE because of maternity leave or medical leave. Okay. And then we have a question here. I founded a nonprofit. Okay, the challenge I have so far is qualifying on the application. I founded the nonprofit and my goal is to acquire more knowledge and not necessarily for employment. Is there someone that can go over my application with me? Yes. Email succeed@cfre.org and somebody will be glad to do that and help you out with that. All right, great. Well, it doesn't look like we have any further questions, so I'll go ahead and wrap this up for you. But thank you everyone so much for being here. Watch your email inbox. I will send you a link to this recording, to the slides, the test content outline. within the next 24 hours. So thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to be with us. Have a great day. And thank you, James. It was wonderful to have you
Thanks,
here.
Ashley.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye now.